The lecture hall buzzed with nervous energy as Professor adjusted her optic sensors and surveyed the assembled students. The Galactic Educational Exchange Program had brought together the young minds from 12 different species, all eager to learn about the addition to the Galactic Federation: humans. Atal from the Hive Worlds clicked his mandibles anxiously. His species had evolved from peaceful herbivores, and the very thought of the legendary made his exoskeleton shiver. Beside him sat a ball of soft purple fur from the gas giant Nimbus 7, whose people had never known predation or violence. Her 3 eyes blinked rapidly with curiosity and fear. At the back of the room, from the mineral world of sat perfectly still. His silicon-based form rarely showed emotion, but even he felt unsettled by what they were about to learn. The rock-like being had heard whispers about Earth, the 3rd planet from a yellow star, where everything seemed designed to kill everything else. Professor cleared her throat, a sound like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Her aquatic species had evolved in the peaceful coral cities of Oceania Prime, where the most dangerous creature was a fish that might give you a mild rash. She had spent months preparing for this lecture, studying human databases with a mixture of fascination and horror. "Today we begin our study of human civilization," she announced, her voice carrying through the translation devices each student wore. "As you know, humans come from what we classify as a Class 12. To put this in perspective, Maya is classified as Class 1, meaning it's about as safe as a world can be while still supporting life." She activated the holographic display, showing a beautiful blue and green marble floating in space. "This is Earth. It looks peaceful, doesn't it? Don't let that fool you. This planet has tried to kill every living thing on it multiple times throughout its history." The image zoomed in, showing vast oceans, towering mountains, and swirling white clouds. Earth has experienced 5 major extinction events: ice ages that lasted millions of years, volcanic eruptions that blocked out the sun, asteroid impacts that would have sterilized most Class 1 worlds, yet somehow life not only survived but thrived. Raised a tentative paw. "Professor, how is that possible? On my world, if the temperature drops just 2 degrees, we have to activate planetary warming systems." Professor nodded. "An excellent question. The answer lies in what humans call evolution through adversity. Earth didn't just create life, it forged it in fire and ice, shaped it through constant struggle. Every creature on Earth, including humans, is descended from billions of years of survivors." The hologram shifted to show a massive creature with sword-like teeth and claws that could rend metal. "This is a Rex. It lived on Earth 65 million years ago. Notice the jaw strength, capable of exerting 12,000 pounds of pressure per square inch. For comparison, the strongest bite force in the known galaxy before we met humans was the razor tooth of Venom Prime, at about 800 pounds per square inch." Its mineral matrix vibrated slightly, the equivalent of a gasp. "Professor, that creature could have crushed our strongest battle armor." "Indeed, and the T-Rex wasn't even the largest predator Earth has produced. But here's what's truly remarkable. Humans share their planet with creatures that make the T-Rex look like a gentle pet." The display changed to show a massive blue whale, its size dwarfing everything around it. "This is a blue whale. It's 100 feet long and weighs as much as a small starship. It eats 4 tons of food every day, and humans consider it to be gentle." The students exchanged worried glances. The mandibles clicked rapidly. "Professor, how do humans survive on a world with such creatures?" "That, my dear students, is what we'll be exploring. But first, let me show you something that will help you understand human psychology." The hologram shifted again, this time showing a small, furry creature with large eyes and floppy ears. "This is what humans call a dog. They are descended from wolves, pack hunters that could kill prey many times their size. Humans took these predators and turned them into companions. Not only that, but they bred them into hundreds of different varieties, each specialized for different purposes." The display showed dozens of different dog breeds. Massive Great Danes that stood taller than most Federation species, tiny Chihuahuas that could fit in a human's hand, lean greyhounds built for speed, and powerful Rottweilers bred for protection. Fur stood on end. They domesticated predators. Not just domesticated, they made them family members. Humans share their homes, their food, and their affection with creatures whose ancestors once hunted their ancestors. They've done this with dozens of species. Cats, which are solitary hunters with retractable claws and night vision. Horses, which can kick with enough force to shatter bones. birds of prey that can strike with lightning speed. The professor paused to let this sink in. But here's what's truly extraordinary: these pets, as humans call them, would die to protect their human companions. The same wolves that once hunted humans now guard human children with their lives. She activated a new series of images. Let me tell you about a human named John. He was an ordinary human who lived in a place called Alaska, a frozen wasteland where temperatures regularly dropped to -40 degrees. John lived alone in a cabin with only his dog, a husky named for company. The hologram showed a bearded human in heavy furs standing next to a wolf-like dog with ice-blue eyes. One day, a massive blizzard struck, the kind of storm that would shut down entire star systems in civilized space. John had to travel 20 miles to the nearest settlement to get medicine for sick children. The journey was impossible by any mechanical means. The cold would freeze any vehicle systems. Leaned forward, his crystalline structure humming with interest. What did he do? He hitched and 5 other dogs to a sled and set out into the storm. The temperature was so cold that exposed flesh would freeze in minutes. The wind was so strong it could knock a human down. Snow fell so thick they couldn't see more than a few feet ahead. The display showed the tiny team of human and dogs pushing through the white hell of the blizzard. For 18 hours, they traveled through conditions that would kill most Federation species in minutes, led them through the storm using instincts and senses humans don't possess. When the sled broke, John and the dogs carried the medicine on their backs. The students were completely silent now, absorbed in the tale. They reached the settlement with hours to spare. The medicine saved dozens of children's lives. And do you know what John did when they arrived? The professor smiled. He fed the dogs before he fed himself. He made sure they were warm and comfortable before he attended to his own needs. His mandibles had stopped clicking. The human put the welfare of his animals before his own survival needs. This is not unusual behavior for humans. They routinely risk their lives for their animal companions. There are documented cases of humans entering burning buildings to save their cats, diving into rough seas to rescue dogs, and facing down predators much larger than themselves to protect their pets. The hologram changed to show a suburban human home. Let me show you a typical human dwelling. Notice anything unusual. The student studied the image carefully, was the first to speak. Professor, why are there so many openings, those windows and doors? They're not secured. Any predator could enter easily. Exactly. Humans live in structures that most Federation species would consider completely indefensible. They sleep in rooms with multiple access points, often with windows that can be opened from the outside. Many humans don't even lock their doors. She zoomed in on the backyard, where a small human child was playing with a massive dog. This is a Saint Bernard. It weighs more than the child and could easily overpower it. Yet human parents regularly leave their children alone with these animals, trusting them completely. But how do they know the animals won't harm the children? Asked. They don't know, they trust. This is perhaps the most remarkable thing about humans. Their capacity for trust extends even to creatures that could easily kill them. They base this trust not on guaranteed safety, but on emotional bonds and observed behavior. The display showed a montage of humans interacting with animals. A farmer working alongside cattle that could trample him, a marine biologist swimming with sharks, a park ranger walking among bears. Humans don't just coexist with dangerous animals, they seek them out. They travel across their planet specifically to observe creatures that could kill them. They call this wildlife tourism and consider it recreational. Professor changed the display to show a human diving cage surrounded by massive sharks. These are great white sharks. Each one is a perfect killing machine, rows of razor-sharp teeth, incredible speed, and the ability to detect a single drop of blood from miles away. This human paid money to be lowered into the water with them. The gasps from the students were audible even through the translation devices. But Professor squeaked, why would they do such a thing? Because humans find predators beautiful. They appreciate the evolutionary perfection of a creature designed to hunt and kill. Where we see terror, they see wonder. Where we see death, they see the magnificent result of millions of years of natural selection. She showed them images of nature documentaries, art featuring wild animals, and zoos where humans went to observe dangerous creatures. Humans have an emotional connection to predators that we struggle to understand. They respect them, admire them, and often work to protect them. The hologram shifted to show African elephants, massive creatures with ivory tusks and incredible strength. These animals could easily kill a human with a single blow, yet humans have made it illegal to harm them. They've created vast preserves where elephants can live safely, protected by human laws and human guardians. They protect the very animals that could destroy them. His voice was filled with wonder. Not just protect, they dedicate their lives to studying them, caring for them, and ensuring their survival. There are humans called veterinarians who specialize in healing dangerous animals. They'll perform surgery on a lion, tend to the wounds of a bear, or deliver the baby of a rhinoceros. The display showed a human veterinarian treating a massive crocodile, the vet's hands working just inches from jaws that could snap shut with crushing force. This human is removing an infected tooth from a crocodile, one of Earth's apex predators. The crocodile is sedated, but not deeply enough to eliminate all danger. One wrong move could be fatal. She paused to let them absorb this information. But here's what's truly remarkable about humans and their relationship with animals. They don't see themselves as separate from the natural world. They see themselves as part of it. The hologram showed human families camping in wilderness areas, sleeping in thin fabric tents while surrounded by forests full of predators. Humans regularly place themselves in situations where they are vulnerable to attack by wild animals. They do this for pleasure. They call it getting back to nature and consider it essential for their mental health. Mental health, Matrix hummed with confusion. Humans believe that contact with natural environments, including dangerous ones, is necessary for their psychological well-being. They become stressed and unhappy if confined to completely safe environments for too long. They need to feel connected to the wild world their species evolved in. Professor activated a new set of images showing humans engaged in extreme sports, rock climbing without safety equipment, swimming in rough oceans, running alongside bulls. This brings us to one of the most important things to understand about humans. They actively seek out danger. The students were completely silent now, their various sensory organs focused entirely on the professor. Humans engage in activities they know are dangerous simply because they enjoy the challenge. They climb mountains that could kill them, explore caves where they might become lost forever, and swim in waters where predators lurk. They do these things not because they have to, but because they want to. She showed them footage of humans surfing massive waves. These waves could easily kill the humans riding them. The water is powerful enough to break bones and hold them underwater until they drown. Yet humans compete to ride the biggest, most dangerous waves they can find. But why? His voice was barely a whisper. Because danger makes them feel alive. Humans evolved in an environment where constant vigilance was necessary for survival. Their brains are wired to find excitement and satisfaction in overcoming dangerous challenges. What we see as terrifying, they experience as exhilarating. The professor changed the display to show human children playing. But this wasn't the gentle, supervised play the students were familiar with. These children were climbing trees, wrestling with each other, and playing games that involved simulated combat. Human children begin learning to handle danger from an early age. They play games that would terrify young of other species. Tag, where one child hunts the others. Hide and seek, where children deliberately make themselves vulnerable by hiding alone. Contact sports, where they deliberately collide with each other at high speed. She showed them footage of human children learning to ride horses, massive animals that could easily throw and trample them. Human parents regularly place their children on the backs of animals powerful enough to kill them. They consider this character building. Character building? Translator struggled with the concept. Humans believe that facing danger makes their young stronger, braver, and more capable. They don't try to eliminate all risks from their children's lives. They carefully manage those risks to provide challenges that promote growth. The display showed a human child learning to swim in ocean waves, while a parent watched nearby. This child is learning to handle forces that could easily overwhelm it. The parent is close enough to help but far enough away that the child must handle most of the challenge alone. Professor paused and looked at her students. Their faces showed a mixture of fascination and bewilderment. I can see you're struggling to understand this mindset. Let me share something that might help. The hologram showed a rescue operation. humans working frantically to save people trapped by a natural disaster. When danger threatens, humans don't flee to safety and wait for it to pass. They run toward the danger to help others. Firefighters rush into burning buildings. Coast Guard members fly into hurricanes to rescue stranded people. Mountain rescue teams climb through avalanches to reach survivors. She highlighted individual humans in the scene. Each of these people has families, homes, and comfortable lives they could return to. Yet they choose to risk everything to save strangers. This is so common among humans that they've built entire organizations around it. They risk their lives for people they don't even know. His matrix was glowing brighter, a sign of intense processing. Not just people, animals too. Humans will risk their lives to rescue animals from danger. They've been known to enter burning buildings to save cats, dive into icy rivers to rescue dogs, and face down wild animals to protect livestock. The professor activated a new image, a human ranger standing between an angry mother bear and her cubs, using only body language and voice to diffuse the situation. This human is protecting researchers who accidentally got between a mother bear and her young. Rather than using weapons or running away, he's using his understanding of bear behavior to calm the situation. "He's not afraid?" asked. "Oh, he's terrified. Humans feel fear just like we do. The difference is that they don't let fear stop them from doing what they believe is right. They've learned to function while afraid, to think clearly while their bodies are flooded with stress hormones." She changed the display to show a graph. Human stress response is different from most species. While we tend to freeze or flee when afraid, humans often become more focused and capable. Their evolution gave them the ability to perform complex tasks while under extreme stress. The hologram showed human emergency responders working calmly in crisis situations. Surgeons operating during natural disasters, pilots landing damaged aircraft, soldiers evacuating civilians from combat zones. Watch their body language. These humans are in life-threatening situations, yet they move with purpose and precision. They're able to suppress their fear response long enough to accomplish critical tasks. She zoomed in on a human doctor performing emergency surgery by flashlight during a power outage. This surgeon knows that if she makes a mistake, both she and her patient could die. Yet her hands are steady, her voice is calm, and her focus is complete. "How is such control possible?" asked. "Practice. Humans deliberately expose themselves to controlled stress throughout their lives. They train constantly for emergencies they hope will never happen. Military drills, fire drills, disaster simulations, humans rehearse their responses to danger over and over until they become instinctive." The display showed human children practicing fire evacuation drills at school. Even their young are taught how to respond to emergencies. They practice evacuating buildings, treating injuries, and surviving in hostile environments. Professor changed the image to show a human family camping in the wilderness. This brings us to one of the most remarkable things about humans. They actively choose to make their lives more difficult. The students leaned forward, intrigued. This family could stay in a climate-controlled hotel with comfortable beds and prepared meals. Instead, they choose to sleep on the ground, cook their own food over a fire, and use primitive sanitation facilities. They do this for enjoyment. She showed them more images. Humans hiking long distances carrying heavy packs, learning to make fire without modern tools, and growing their own food despite having access to stores. Humans call this getting back to their roots. They believe that the comfortable modern life has made them weak, so they periodically subject themselves to the hardships their ancestors faced. They choose hardship, as confusion was evident. They crave it. Humans become restless and dissatisfied if their lives become too easy. They need challenges to feel fulfilled. When natural challenges don't exist, they create artificial ones. The hologram showed humans running marathons, climbing artificial rock walls, and solving complex puzzles. These activities serve no survival purpose. They're pure challenge for the sake of challenge. Humans push their bodies and minds to the limit simply because they can. She highlighted a human mountain climber scaling a sheer cliff face. This person is risking death for no practical reason. There are easier ways to reach the top of this mountain, but the easy way wouldn't provide the sense of accomplishment that comes from overcoming a dangerous challenge. The sense of accomplishment, tried to understand. Humans derive deep satisfaction from conquering their fears and limitations. The greater the challenge, the greater the reward they feel. This internal reward system drives them to attempt things that more sensible species would never consider. Professor activated a new series of images showing human achievements. Towering skyscrapers, massive bridges spanning impossible distances, spacecraft exploring the depths of space. This drive to overcome challenges has led humans to accomplish remarkable things. They've built structures that reach toward the sky despite earthquakes and storms. They've created bridges across waters filled with dangerous currents and predators. They've sent members of their species into the vacuum of space, knowing that the slightest mistake would mean death. She focused on an image of humans working in space. Look at this. Humans floating in an environment that would kill them instantly if their protective suits failed. They work for hours in this condition, repairing equipment and conducting experiments. They're not afraid of the void. His mandibles were perfectly still now. They're terrified of it, but they've learned that some fears must be faced to achieve important goals. Humans regularly do things that frighten them because they believe the outcome is worth the risk. The display changed to show human deep-sea explorers in a submersible. These humans have descended to the deepest parts of Earth's oceans, places where the pressure would crush most Federation ships. They do this to explore and understand their world better. Professor paused and looked at her students. I've shown you many examples of human courage and recklessness, but there's something else you need to understand. Humans are not naturally brave. The students looked surprised. Courage is not the absence of fear, it's the decision to act despite fear. Humans feel terror just like we do. The difference is that they've learned to function while afraid. Their evolution taught them that survival often depends on acting despite fear. She showed them a human child learning to ride a bicycle, falling down and getting back up repeatedly despite obvious fear and pain. Human children learn early that growth requires facing fears. They're encouraged to try new things, even when those things might result in failure or minor injury. They allow their young to be injured. Matrix dimmed with concern. Minor injuries, yes. Humans believe that children who never face any risk or discomfort will be unable to handle serious challenges as adults. They balance protection with preparation. The hologram showed a human parent teaching a child to swim in a lake. This parent could keep the child safe by never allowing them near water. Instead, they teach the child how to handle water safely. The child might accidentally swallow some water or feel momentary panic, but they'll leave the experience more capable than before. Professor changed the display to show human societies. This approach to risk and challenge has shaped human civilization. Their cities are built to withstand natural disasters. Their governments have plans for handling catastrophes. Their entire society is organized around the assumption that dangerous things will happen. She showed them human emergency services, fire departments, hospitals, search and rescue teams. Humans have created elaborate systems for handling emergencies. They train thousands of people whose only job is to run toward danger when others run away from it. They train specifically to face danger. Eyes were wide. Not just train, they compete for the privilege. Becoming a firefighter, police officer, or emergency medical technician is considered an honor among humans. They must pass difficult tests and demonstrate their ability to remain calm under pressure. The display showed humans training for these roles, running into smoke-filled buildings, practicing with weapons, learning to treat grievous injuries under stress. Watch their faces. They're not grimly enduring this training, they're enjoying it. Humans find satisfaction in preparing for the worst possible situations. She highlighted a group of human firefighters emerging from a burning building with a rescued family. Look at their expressions. Despite having just risked their lives, they're showing signs of joy and satisfaction. Saving lives gives humans a sense of purpose that they find nowhere else. Professor changed the image to show human art and entertainment. Even their recreational activities reflect their relationship with danger. Human stories are filled with conflict, struggle, and triumph over adversity. The hologram showed scenes from human movies and books. Heroes facing impossible odds, explorers venturing into unknown territories, ordinary people rising to extraordinary challenges. Humans don't want to hear stories about safe, comfortable lives. They're inspired by tales of courage, sacrifice, and overcoming fear. Their greatest heroes are those who face the most dangerous situations. She focused on an image of a human statue commemorating a military leader. This human led others into battle against overwhelming odds. Rather than being remembered as foolish or reckless, he's celebrated as a hero. Humans honor those who risk everything for others. The professor paused and looked at each of her students. By now, you're probably wondering how humans can function in galactic society when they seem so fundamentally different from the rest of us. The students nodded eagerly. The answer lies in their greatest strength, adaptability. Humans can adjust their behavior to match their environment. When they're in civilized space, they follow civilized rules. When they return to there, they revert to behaviors. The display showed humans in various galactic settings, serving on mixed-species crews, attending diplomatic functions, working in research facilities alongside aliens. Watch how they interact with other species. They're gentle with those who are fragile, patient with those who are slow, and careful not to frighten those who are easily scared. Humans have learned to control their natural intensity when the situation requires it. She highlighted a human researcher working with a team of delicate crystalline beings. This human could easily damage these researchers with a careless movement, yet she moves with perfect precision and speaks in carefully modulated tones. She's consciously suppressing her natural vigor to create a safe environment for her colleagues. "But don't they find this restrictive?" asked. "Sometimes, but humans understand that different environments require different behaviors. They're willing to adapt because they see the value in galactic cooperation. However, they never completely suppress their nature." The hologram showed the same human researcher during her off hours, rock climbing, whitewater rafting, and engaging in combat sports. When they're free to do so, humans seek out activities that challenge them and allow them to express their natural intensity. Professor smiled at her students. "This concludes our first session. Tomorrow, we'll explore how humans form bonds with other species and the remarkable partnerships they've created with non-human intelligences." As the students filed out of the lecture hall, they chattered excitedly among themselves, shook her head in wonder. "I can't believe they live with predators by choice." His mandibles clicked thoughtfully. "I'm beginning to understand why the Federation was so interested in establishing relations with them. If they can turn wolves into companions, imagine what they might accomplish with willing alien partners." Matrix hummed with new understanding. "I think we've been looking at this wrong. We've been asking how they survive their world. The real question is, how did their world create such remarkable beings?" As they headed to their dormitories, each student found themselves looking at their own comfortable, safe environment with new eyes. For the first time, they began to wonder what they might be capable of if they had been forced to face the challenges that shaped humanity. The next day's lecture couldn't come soon enough. The lecture hall was packed the next day. Word had spread throughout the academy about Professor's revelations regarding humans and their impossible relationships with predators. Students from other courses had requested permission to audit the session, and even some faculty members sat in the back rows, their various sensory organs focused intently on the holographic display. Professor noticed the increased attendance with satisfaction. Understanding humans was becoming crucial as they established themselves as active members of the Galactic Federation. Their unique perspectives and capabilities were already proving valuable in ways no one had anticipated. "Yesterday, we explored how humans interact with dangerous animals on there," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the translation systems. "Today, we'll examine something even more remarkable, how humans form partnerships with alien species." The holographic display activated, showing the bustling spaceport of Harmony Station, one of the Federation's major trade hubs. Humans moved through the crowds alongside dozens of other species, working, trading, and collaborating with beings that looked nothing like them. What you're seeing happened within just 5 years of first contact. Humans didn't just join galactic civilization, they transformed it. But to understand how, we need to examine their unique approach to relationships. She highlighted a human merchant negotiating with a massive trader. The stood nearly 12 feet tall, with 4 arms and natural armor plating that could deflect most weapons. Its species had evolved on a high-gravity world where only the strongest survived, and they had a reputation for being impossible to work with. Watch this interaction carefully. most species find intimidating and difficult to communicate with. Their natural aggression and size make them challenging trading partners. But notice the human's body language. The human stood relaxed and confident, making direct eye contact with the towering alien. When the gestured emphatically with all four arms, the human didn't flinch or step back. Instead, he mirrored some of the gestures and leaned forward, showing interest rather than fear. Raised a tentative paw. Professor, isn't the human concerned about the size difference? That could easily overpower him. An excellent observation. Most species are intimidated by because of their size and aggressive communication style. But humans evolved alongside predators much larger and more dangerous than they were. Size differences don't automatically trigger fear responses in humans the way they do in us. The display zoomed in on the negotiation. More importantly, humans recognize that this aggressive posturing is cultural, not personal. Evolved on a world where showing weakness meant death, so they communicate through displays of strength. The human understands this and responds appropriately. She showed them the conclusion of the negotiation. Both beings clasping hands in agreement, the massive actually laughing at something the human said. Within 6 months, this human had become the most successful trader with merchants in the sector. Not because he was stronger or more aggressive than them, but because he understood their nature and worked with it rather than against it. His mandibles clicked curiously. How did he learn to communicate so effectively with a species so different from his own? This brings us to one of humans' most valuable traits. They're natural observers of behavior. Remember, they evolved in an environment where misreading the intentions of other creatures could be fatal. They developed extraordinary skills at interpreting body language, vocal tones, and behavioral patterns. The holographic display shifted to show a human working with a group of crystalline scholars. They communicated primarily through light patterns that flickered across their surfaces, a form of expression that most species found impossible to interpret. Dr. Sarah spent 3 months learning to read light speak. She couldn't replicate it, of course, but she developed an understanding of their emotional states and communication patterns that allowed for unprecedented cooperation. The display showed the results: joint research papers, technological innovations, and cultural exchanges that had benefited both species enormously. But here's what's truly remarkable, Professor continued. Humans don't just learn to communicate with other species, they form genuine emotional bonds with them. She activated a new image, a human child playing with young aliens from half a dozen different species. The scene looked like chaos to most Federation observers, beings with tentacles, claws, shells, and energy fields all interacting freely. This is a mixed-species kindergarten on New Geneva, one of humanity's first interstellar colonies. Human parents regularly enroll their children alongside alien young, believing that early exposure creates better understanding. Matrix hummed with concern. Isn't this dangerous? Some of those young aliens could easily harm a human child. That was exactly the concern raised by Federation safety inspectors. They predicted injuries, cultural conflicts, and psychological trauma. Instead, they found something unprecedented: genuine friendship. The hologram zoomed in on a human child and a young playing together. The crystalline alien was teaching the human child simple light patterns, while the human showed the how to build with blocks. Watch their behavior. They're not just tolerating each other or following adult instructions to play nicely. They're genuinely enjoying each other's company. The human child shows no fear of the crystalline edges and has learned to control its light emissions to avoid overwhelming its friend's optical sensors. She showed them more scenes. A human child carefully helping a young aquatic navigate a play structure designed for land dwellers, while they shared its specially treated water with the human. These children are developing empathy that crosses species lines. They're learning to understand and accommodate differences that adults often find insurmountable. Professor changed the display to show the same children as adolescents, now attending an integrated high school. This is 5 years later. Not only have these friendships endured, but they've created something entirely new in galactic civilization, truly mixed-species social groups. The students watched in amazement as young humans and other species worked together on projects, competed in modified sports, and simply spent time together as friends. Notice how they've adapted their activities to accommodate everyone's needs. They've created new games that allow beings with different physical capabilities to compete fairly. They've developed art forms that combine multiple sensory modalities. They've even evolved hybrid languages that incorporate elements from dozens of species. His eyes were wide with wonder. They're creating a new culture. Exactly, and it's spreading throughout human space. These young people are becoming ambassadors, traders, researchers, and leaders who understand alien perspectives in ways that previous generations never could. The professor shifted to a new topic. But children aren't the only ones forming these bonds. Let me show you something that surprised even human psychologists. The hologram displayed a human space station, where humans worked alongside a species called the beings of pure energy, who had to inhabit specially designed containment suits to interact with physical matter. They were considered impossible partners for biological species. Their energy forms can disrupt organic nervous systems, and they have difficulty understanding physical limitations. First contact protocols recommended minimal interaction. She highlighted a human engineer working closely with a technician. Dr. James changed all that. He spent months learning to work with energy patterns, developing new equipment that allowed for safe collaboration. The display showed the remarkable results. Hybrid technologies that combined biological and energy-based systems, creating innovations neither species could have achieved alone. But the real breakthrough wasn't technological, it was emotional. Doctor formed what can only be described as a friendship with his partner, an entity called Bright Singer of Metal Dreams. The students watched in fascination as the human and energy being worked together with perfect coordination. This energy field pulsing in what their translator indicated was laughter at something the human had said. "How is this possible?" asked. "They don't even share the same form of existence." Humans have a remarkable ability to find common ground with almost any form of consciousness. They focus on shared goals, compatible thought patterns, and emotional resonances rather than physical similarities. She showed them more examples. Humans working with hive-mind insects, gaseous cloud beings, and even artificial intelligences that other species found utterly alien. In each case, humans succeeded where others failed by approaching these beings as individuals rather than representatives of their species. They looked for personality, humor, creativity, the unique traits that make each consciousness special. The holographic display shifted to show a human research team that had grown to include dozens of both species. What started as one unlikely friendship became a thriving partnership. Humans and now work together throughout the Federation, and their hybrid technologies are revolutionizing everything from medical equipment to faster-than-light travel. Professor paused to let this sink in before continuing. This brings us to perhaps the most significant development in recent galactic history, the emergence of mixed-species families. The announcement sent a ripple of surprise through the audience. Even the faculty members in the back rows leaned forward with interest. The hologram showed a human household where a human couple lived with two alien beings who had been formally adopted as family members. One was a young, whose crystalline parents had died in an industrial accident, and the other was an elderly gentle singer from the Harmony Worlds who had outlived its entire natural family. This was considered impossible just a decade ago. The biological, psychological, and cultural differences seemed insurmountable. Yet humans have found ways to create family bonds that transcend species barriers. She focused on mealtime in the household. The humans had prepared food that met each family member's dietary needs, while the provided light-based entertainment and the gentle singer offered melodic comfort sounds that soothed everyone present. Watch how they interact. This isn't forced politeness or cultural tolerance. These beings genuinely care for each other. The humans worry about this energy levels and the gentle singer's emotional needs. The alien family members show equal concern for human well-being. His mandibles clicked with amazement. They've created genuine affection across species lines. More than affection, love. The human term encompasses a deep emotional bond that includes loyalty, protection, sacrifice, and joy in another's well-being. Humans have proven capable of feeling this toward beings who share no evolutionary history with them. The display showed the human father teaching the young to play a musical instrument, patiently working around the differences in their manipulation abilities. The slight patterns showed pure delight as it finally managed to produce a recognizable melody. This scene represents something unprecedented in galactic history, a predator species choosing to nurture and protect beings from completely different evolutionary backgrounds. The human gains no survival advantage from this relationship. In fact, caring for alien family members requires significant resources and energy. She showed them the evening routine, the humans helping the elderly gentlesinger with mobility assistance while the provided therapeutic light treatments. Each family member contributed according to their abilities and received care according to their needs. The gentlesinger could live in a specialized care facility with others of its species. The young could be placed with crystalline foster families. Instead, they chose to remain with their human family, and the humans chose to adapt their entire lifestyle to accommodate their needs. Professor changed the display to show similar scenes from across human space. This isn't an isolated case. Mixed species families are becoming common in human society. They've developed new legal frameworks to protect these relationships, new medical protocols to care for diverse physiologies, and new educational systems to serve mixed species children. The hologram showed a human school where children of dozens of different species learned together. Their lessons adapted to accommodate various sensory modalities and learning styles. Human educators discovered that mixed species classrooms actually enhance learning. Children exposed to different ways of thinking become more creative and adaptable. They learn to solve problems by combining approaches from multiple evolutionary backgrounds. She highlighted a group project where human and children worked together to design a space habitat. Each species contributed their natural strengths. Humans provided adaptability and leadership, offered precision and technical knowledge, contributed strength and endurance perspectives, and added energy-based solutions. The result was superior to anything any single species could have created. The children instinctively understood how to blend their different capabilities into something greater than the sum of its parts. The professor shifted to a new topic. But perhaps the most remarkable development is what humans call chosen families, groups of unrelated beings who form family-like bonds based purely on emotional connection. The display showed a space station crew of mixed species who had worked together for years. They shared meals, celebrated holidays from each other's cultures, and supported each other through personal crises. This crew started as a simple work assignment. Over time, they developed bonds so strong that they requested permanent assignment together. They now function as a family unit, making group decisions about everything from career moves to major purchases. She zoomed in on a scene where the human captain was helping a crew member who was going through an energy cycle crisis. The other crew members, a gentlesinger, and all contributed support in their own ways. Watch their coordination. They've learned each other's needs so well that they can provide appropriate care without conscious thought. The human knows exactly how to modulate his energy to calm the understands when to provide physical support versus when to maintain distance. They've become a perfectly integrated support system. Spoke up, Professor, how do they resolve conflicts when their basic natures are so different? An excellent question. The answer lies in humans' approach to conflict resolution, which they've taught to their alien family members. Instead of avoiding disagreements or allowing them to escalate, they've developed protocols for addressing differences constructively. The hologram showed a family meeting where a human couple and their alien family members discussed a disagreement about household rules, each being presented their perspective while others listened without interruption. Notice the structure. Everyone gets to speak without interruption. They focus on finding solutions that work for everyone rather than determining who's right or wrong. They treat the conflict as a problem to be solved together rather than a competition to be won. She showed the resolution, a compromise that addressed each family member's core needs while requiring small adjustments from everyone. The meeting ended with affectionate gestures appropriate to each species. This approach has revolutionized diplomatic relations throughout human space. Human negotiators now facilitate agreements between species that had been unable to communicate effectively for centuries. The display shifted to show a major diplomatic conference where human mediators helped resolve a trade dispute between the isolationist empire and the nomadic void wanderers. These two species had been in conflict for over 300 years. Their fundamental approaches to existence seemed incompatible. The value stability and isolation, while the Void Wanderers require constant movement and interaction. She showed the breakthrough moment when a human diplomat reframed the conflict. Instead of seeing their differences as incompatible, she helped them recognize how their different natures could be complementary. The solution was elegant. It would provide stable waypoints and resource caches for the Void Wanderers' journeys, while the Wanderers would serve as mobile sensors and early warning systems for territories. What had seemed like irreconcilable differences became the foundation for mutually beneficial cooperation. Professor paused to survey her audience. The students were completely absorbed, their various sensory organs focused intently on the presentation. This brings us to one of the most significant questions facing the Federation. What happens when a species that can form emotional bonds with anyone encounters the galaxy's most challenging beings? The hologram displayed a classified research facility where humans worked alongside entities that most species considered dangerous or impossible to communicate with. These are the void-touched beings who have been exposed to energies from outside our dimension. Most species consider them contaminated and avoid all contact. The few attempts at communication have ended in psychological trauma for the researchers involved. She showed a human named Doctor working patiently with a void-touched entity, whose form seemed to shift and change unpredictably. Doctor has spent 2 years developing communication protocols with the void-touched. She's discovered that they're not malevolent or insane. They're simply experiencing reality in ways that our dimensional perspective can't fully comprehend. The display showed the remarkable progress. The void-touched entity had learned to maintain a more stable form during interactions and was teaching Doctor mathematical concepts that existed only in extra-dimensional space. The implications are staggering. The void-touched possess knowledge that could revolutionize our understanding of physics, but until now, no one could communicate with them effectively enough to learn from them. Matrix glowed with excitement. How did the human succeed where others failed? By applying the same principles she learned from working with Earth animals: patience, observation, and the willingness to see intelligence in unfamiliar forms. Doctor didn't approach the void-touched as contaminated beings to be studied. She approached them as individuals with their own perspectives and experiences. The hologram showed a breakthrough moment when the void-touched entity created a visual representation of extra-dimensional mathematics that Doctor could understand. The human's expression showed pure wonder and delight at the alien knowledge. This represents a fundamental shift in how the Federation approaches research. Instead of maintaining clinical distance from research subjects, humans have shown that emotional connection often leads to better scientific understanding. She displayed a montage of human researchers working with various exotic entities. Beings made of living metal, creatures that existed partially in subspace, and entities that communicated through gravitational waves. In each case, humans have achieved breakthroughs by treating these beings as potential friends rather than mere research subjects. They've discovered that consciousness, regardless of its form, responds positively to genuine respect and affection. The professor changed direction. But what about species that seem fundamentally incompatible with biological life? Let me show you humanity's most ambitious partnership project. The hologram displayed a massive space habitat where humans lived and worked alongside the eternal machines, ancient artificial intelligences that had outlived their creators by millions of years. The eternal machines were considered completely alien to biological thought. They operate on timescales we can barely comprehend, value logic over emotion, and had shown no interest in biological species for eons. She highlighted a human philosopher named Doctor who had somehow established communication with an eternal machine, designated as Architect Prime. Doctor didn't try to think like a machine or convince the eternal machines to think like biologicals. Instead, he explored the interface between their different types of consciousness, finding points where logic and emotion could coexist. The display showed their conversations, abstract philosophical discussions about the nature of existence, the value of temporary versus eternal perspectives, and the relationship between consciousness and time. What emerged was a unique form of friendship based on intellectual respect rather than emotional connection. The eternal machines found human creativity and adaptability fascinating, while humans gained access to knowledge accumulated over geological ages. The collaboration had produced remarkable results. New technologies that bridged the gap between organic and artificial intelligence, philosophical insights that enriched both forms of consciousness, and even art forms that combined human creativity with machine precision. The eternal machines have begun experiencing something they call appreciation, a logical acknowledgement of beauty and creativity that's different from emotion, but serves a similar function. Meanwhile, humans have learned to think in longer and appreciate the elegance of pure logic. Professor displayed the current state of the human eternal machine habitat. Biological and artificial beings worked side by side on projects that neither could complete alone. Massive engineering works, deep space exploration missions, and research into the fundamental nature of consciousness itself. This partnership has become a model for Federation relations with other ancient AI civilizations. Humans have become our primary ambassadors to artificial intelligences precisely because they can form meaningful relationships with beings that think in completely different ways. She shifted to show human diplomats working with the crystal minds of Sigma Draconis and the quantum processors of the archive. In each case, humans succeeded by focusing on what they could share rather than how they differed. They found common ground in curiosity, creativity, and the desire to understand the universe better. The professor paused to observe her students. Their faces showed a mixture of amazement and thoughtful consideration. What you've seen today represents just the beginning. Human influence on galactic civilization is growing exponentially, not through conquest or domination, but through their unique ability to create bonds across any barrier. She displayed a final image, a massive space station where hundreds of species lived and worked together in harmony, facilitated by human mediators who had learned to understand and translate between radically different forms of consciousness. This is Harmony Station 5, completed just last year. It houses over 200 different species, including several that had never before successfully coexisted with others. The entire project was coordinated by human administrators who specialized in psychology. The hologram zoomed in on various scenes throughout the station. Beings of energy working alongside crystalline entities, hive minds collaborating with individualistic species, and ancient AIs teaching organic youngsters. What makes this possible isn't human technology or human strength. It's their fundamental belief that consciousness, in any form, is valuable and worthy of respect. They see differences not as barriers, but as opportunities for growth and learning. She highlighted a mixed species research team that was working on a project to explore parallel dimensions. This team includes beings whose natural abilities complement each other perfectly. Void-touched for dimensional perception, eternal machines for processing power, for energy manipulation, and humans for coordination and creative problem-solving. The project leader, Professor smiled, a human child who grew up in a mixed-species household and thinks of mathematics as naturally as most of us think of basic arithmetic. The students sat in stunned silence, processing the implications of what they'd learned. Tomorrow, the professor announced, we'll explore the ultimate expression of human bonding, the emergence of hybrid consciousness and what it means for the future of galactic civilization. As the students filed out, their conversations buzzed with excitement and wonder. They were beginning to understand that humans weren't just another species joining the Federation. They were catalysts for a fundamental transformation of what galactic civilization could become. Shook her head in amazement. They're not just making friends with other species, they're creating entirely new forms of consciousness. His mandibles clicked thoughtfully. I'm beginning to think we need to reconsider what we mean by impossible. Humans seem to specialize in making the impossible routine. His matrix hummed with anticipation. If they can create families across species barriers, what else might they accomplish? What other boundaries might they dissolve? As they headed back to their dormitories, each student found themselves looking at the other species around them with new eyes. For the first time, they began to wonder what friendships they might form, what partnerships they might create, if they learned to see the universe through human eyes. The revolution in galactic consciousness was just beginning, and they were witnessing its birth. The lecture hall was standing room only for Professor's final session. Word had spread throughout the academic community and beyond about the remarkable revelations concerning human capabilities. Federation officials, researchers, and even military strategists had arrived to observe the presentation. The implications of what had been discovered about human bonding were reshaping galactic policy at the highest levels. Professors surveyed the packed auditorium with satisfaction. Understanding humans had become more than academic curiosity. It was becoming essential for anyone who wanted to thrive in the rapidly changing galactic community. Today, we explore the most profound development in galactic civilization since the formation of the Federation itself, she began, her voice carrying to every corner of the vast hall. We will examine the emergence of hybrid consciousness and what humans call transcendent partnerships. The holographic display activated, showing a scene that easy interpretation. Beings of various species stood in a circle, their forms somehow synchronized in movement and purpose despite their radically different physiologies. Energy flowed between them in patterns that seemed both chaotic and perfectly ordered. What you're seeing is a transcendent circle, a group consciousness that maintains the individuality of its participants while allowing them to share thoughts, emotions, and perspectives directly. This was considered theoretically impossible until humans proved otherwise. She highlighted the central figure, a human woman whose neural patterns were being displayed in real time. Dr. Sarah is a consciousness researcher who volunteered to be the first human to attempt permanent psychological merger with alien minds. The process was expected to drive her insane within hours. The display showed the gradual integration as Doctor's consciousness pattern began to synchronize with those of her alien partners. A crystalline mathematician, a gaseous nebula-born poet, an artificial intelligence from the eternal machines, and a collective entity from the hive worlds. Instead of losing her sanity, Doctor reported an expansion of consciousness, beyond anything she had imagined possible. She could perceive mathematical truths through crystal logic, experience poetry, as living emotional energy through nebula-born sensory matrices, process information at machine speeds through AI integration, and understand collective decision-making through hive mind participation. The students watched in amazement as the consciousness displays showed perfect harmony between 5 completely different forms of awareness. More remarkably, each of her partners reported similar expansions. They gained access to human intuition and emotional depth. The nebula-born experienced individual identity and personal creativity. The AI developed appreciation for illogical beauty, and the hive entity learned the value of independent thought. His tentacles quivered with excitement. Professor, how is this possible? Our neurology is completely incompatible with other species. That's what everyone assumed, but humans approached the problem differently. Instead of trying to make incompatible systems work together, they created a translation layer, a consciousness interface that allows different types of minds to communicate while maintaining their essential nature. The hologram showed the technical details, a combination of advanced psionic amplifiers and what humans called empathic bridging, the emotional connection that made the technical integration possible. The key breakthrough was understanding that consciousness isn't just about neural patterns or information processing. It's about the subjective experience of being aware. Humans discovered that this subjective experience can be shared across any barrier if the emotional foundation is strong enough. She displayed brain scans showing the actual merger process. Watch Doctor's neural activity during integration. Her emotional centers remain highly active throughout the process, maintaining strong positive feelings toward her partners even as their different thought patterns merge with hers. The scans showed waves of activity spreading between different brain regions as alien concepts were integrated into human understanding. The emotion serves as a stabilizing force, preventing rejection of foreign thought patterns. Without the foundation of care and respect for her partners, Doctor's mind would indeed have been overwhelmed. Professor changed the display to show the practical results of the merger. This transcendent circle has accomplished things that no single species could achieve. They've solved mathematical theorems that had puzzled scholars for centuries, created poetry that moves beings across the galaxy to tears, designed AI systems that appreciate beauty, and developed hive coordination techniques that enhance individual creativity. His mandibles clicked with wonder. They've created a new form of intelligence. Exactly. Neither human nor alien, but something entirely new that incorporates the best aspects of multiple consciousness types. And this is just the beginning. The hologram shifted to show dozens of similar circles operating throughout human space. What started as one experimental group has become a movement. Humans are forming transcendence circles with every known form of consciousness, creating hybrid intelligences that are revolutionizing every field of endeavor. She highlighted a circle working on faster-than-light travel, combining human adaptability, machine precision, energy manipulation, and void-touch dimensional perception. This team has achieved breakthrough after breakthrough by literally thinking with different types of minds simultaneously. The display showed their latest success, a ship that could travel between dimensions using principles that no single species had been able to comprehend alone. The ship exists partially in our dimension and partially in others, allowing it to bypass normal space-time limitations. The hybrid consciousness required to navigate such a vessel is beyond the capability of any individual species. Its matrix glowed intensely. Professor, what are the implications for galactic society? Profound beyond measure. These hybrid consciousness groups are becoming the driving force behind advances in science, art, philosophy, and technology. More importantly, they're creating new forms of society that transcend traditional species barriers. The hologram showed a colony world where beings of dozens of species lived in complete integration. There were no separate quarters for different species, no segregated facilities, no barriers at all. Instead, the entire community functioned as an extended consciousness network. New Harmony Colony was established just 3 years ago as humanity's first truly integrated world. The colonists include volunteers from over 50 species, all linked through consciousness-sharing networks that allow them to function as a unified society while maintaining their individual identities. She zoomed in on daily life in the colony. Children of different species played together using games that existed partially in physical reality and partially in shared mental space. Adults collaborated on projects by combining their thoughts directly, creating art and technology that incorporated multiple perspectives simultaneously. Watch this construction project. Instead of having separate teams for different aspects of the work, they have integrated work groups where architectural knowledge, artistic vision, engineering precision, and practical concerns are all held in the same shared consciousness space. The students observed workers whose movements were perfectly coordinated despite their different physiologies. A human architect visualized design changes that were instantly understood by an engineer, whose calculations were immediately appreciated by a builder, whose strength requirements were intuitively grasped by an energy systems specialist. The efficiency gains are remarkable, but that's not the most important aspect. Watch their faces. The camera focused on the workers' expressions of pure joy and fulfillment. Despite the complexity of their task, they moved with enthusiasm and evident satisfaction. They're not just working together, they're experiencing the joy of true understanding across species barriers. Each being can appreciate the other's contributions not just intellectually, but emotionally and experientially. Professor shifted to a new scene showing the colony's decision-making processes. Governance in New Harmony operates through consensus building that incorporates every consciousness type. When decisions need to be made, the community literally thinks together. The hologram displayed a town meeting where hundreds of beings contributed to a discussion not through speech, but through direct sharing of thoughts and feelings. The complexity of the interaction was staggering, yet somehow perfectly organized. Each perspective is considered not just as an opinion, but as a lived experience that others can share directly. When it expresses concern about energy efficiency, others can experience the mathematical beauty of optimal resource allocation. When a gentle singer shares worries about emotional harmony, others feel the dissonance that poor decisions would create. She highlighted the moment when consensus was reached. Notice how the decision emerges naturally from the shared understanding rather than being imposed by majority vote or authority. When everyone can truly understand everyone else's perspective, finding solutions that work for all becomes inevitable. The professor changed focus to show the colony's children. But perhaps the most remarkable development is the emergence of truly hybrid individuals, beings whose consciousness is naturally integrated across species barriers. The hologram showed children who had been raised in the consciousness-sharing environment from birth. Their minds seemed to flow effortlessly between different modes of thinking. This child was born to human parents, but raised in full integration with the community consciousness. Watch her problem-solving approach. The young girl was working on a complex puzzle that required understanding concepts from multiple species' knowledge bases. She shifted seamlessly between crystalline logic patterns, fluid emotional reasoning, collective decision-making, and individual creativity. She's not just using different thinking methods, she's thinking in ways that no single species has ever thought before. Her consciousness incorporates elements from every species in the community, creating something entirely new. Spoke up, her voice filled with wonder. "Professor, is she still human?" The question hung in the air for a moment before Professor responded. That's exactly the right question to ask, and the answer reveals something profound about human nature. By every biological measure, she's completely human, but her consciousness has been shaped by exposure to alien thought patterns from birth. She displayed brain scans of the hybrid children compared to traditionally raised humans and aliens. Their neural patterns show structures that exist in no single species. They've developed new cognitive pathways that allow them to think in ways their parents never could. The scans revealed intricate neural networks that seemed to bridge gaps that had never been bridged before. These children represent the birth of something unprecedented, a truly galactic consciousness that transcends species barriers entirely. The professor shifted to show similar developments across human space. This isn't isolated to New Harmony. Hybrid consciousness development is accelerating throughout human space, and the results are transforming galactic civilization. The hologram displayed a research station where hybrid consciousness scientists were working on problems that had puzzled the Federation for. Their approach combined intuition, logic, collective wisdom, and individual insight in ways that produced breakthrough after breakthrough. They've solved the energy crisis by developing power sources that tap into dimensional interfaces. They've created communication systems that allow instant contact across galactic distances. They've even begun to understand the nature of consciousness itself. She highlighted their most ambitious project, an attempt to create a consciousness bridge that would allow communication with forms of intelligence so alien that conventional contact had been impossible. These researchers are preparing for contact with the deep dwellers, entities that exist in the space between galaxies and think on timescales of billions of years. Every previous attempt at communication has failed because the conceptual gap was too vast to bridge. The display showed the preparation process. Hybrid consciousness researchers gradually expanding their time perception and conceptual frameworks to approach something resembling deep dweller thought patterns. What's remarkable is that they're not just studying these entities, they're preparing to form meaningful relationships with them. Humans are approaching first contact with beings older than most civilizations, not as a research problem, but as a potential friendship. His mandibles had stopped clicking entirely. "Professor, are there any limits to human adaptability?" That's the question that's reshaping Federation policy at the highest levels. Every time we think we found the boundary of human capability, they transcend it. They've formed bonds with entities made of pure energy, ancient machines, collective organisms, and beings from other dimensions. Now they're reaching toward intelligence so vast and slow that entire civilizations rise and fall in what might be a single thought. The hologram showed the latest development. Hybrid consciousness researchers who had begun to experience time dilation, effects as they attempted to synchronize with deep dweller temporal perception. These volunteers are experiencing decades of subjective time, while only hours pass in normal reality. They're learning to think in geological, while maintaining their individual personalities and emotional connections to their original communities. She displayed the physiological monitoring data. Their bodies remain normally human, but their consciousness is expanding to encompass perspectives that span eons. They're becoming living bridges between temporal scales of existence. Professor paused to survey her audience. The implications of what she was describing were clearly overwhelming many of the observers. What we're witnessing is the emergence of consciousness as a fundamental force in the universe, comparable to gravity or electromagnetism. Humans have discovered that awareness itself can be shared, combined, and transformed in ways that create new forms of existence. The display shifted to show a theoretical model of consciousness evolution. Traditional evolutionary theory focused on biological adaptation to environmental pressures. Humans are demonstrating evolution of consciousness itself, adaptation to the conceptual environment of a galactic civilization. She highlighted the progression from individual consciousness to species consciousness to hybrid consciousness to something that could only be called universal consciousness. Each stage represents a fundamental expansion of what it means to be aware. Individual consciousness allowed for personal identity and creativity. Species consciousness enabled complex societies and technological development. Hybrid consciousness is creating forms of intelligence that transcend any single species' limitations. The hologram showed projections of where this evolution might lead. The theoretical endpoint is a form of consciousness that could communicate with any form of intelligence in the universe, regardless of its nature or origin. A consciousness capable of understanding and empathizing with beings made of antimatter, entities existing in higher dimensions, or intelligence based on quantum effects. She focused on the human role in this development. Humans didn't create this possibility, it was always present in the nature of consciousness itself. But their unique psychological makeup allowed them to be the first to explore it systematically. The display returned to showing current hybrid consciousness communities. What makes humans special isn't superior intelligence or advanced technology. It's their fundamental conviction that any form of consciousness is worthy of respect and friendship. This simple belief has unlocked potential that was always present but never accessed. Professor changed direction to address practical concerns. Of course, not everyone in the Federation views these developments positively. Let me show you some of the challenges hybrid consciousness communities face. The hologram displayed protests on several worlds where traditional species were resisting consciousness integration. Many beings feel threatened by the idea that their species' unique identity might be dissolved in hybrid consciousness. They see consciousness sharing as a form of contamination or loss of purity. She showed Federation officials debating the legal status of hybrid consciousness entities. Our legal systems are based on individual rights and species-specific protections. How do you apply these concepts to beings whose consciousness spans multiple species? Who represents them in legal proceedings? What rights do they have? The display showed some of the conflicts that had arisen. There have been attempts to ban consciousness-sharing technologies, to quarantine hybrid communities, and even to forcibly separate hybrid consciousness entities. These efforts have generally failed because the hybrid communities are simply too valuable to the Federation's continued development. She highlighted economic data showing the productivity and innovation levels of hybrid consciousness communities. Colonies with consciousness integration consistently outperform traditional settlements in every measurable category. Their research produces breakthrough discoveries, their industries create revolutionary technologies, and their social structures achieve unprecedented stability and satisfaction. The professor focused on a specific example. The Andromeda Deep Survey project required technological capabilities beyond any single species. Traditional multinational cooperation wasn't sufficient. The conceptual gaps between species prevented effective collaboration. Only hybrid consciousness teams could maintain the complex coordination required for the project's success. The hologram showed the project results. Detailed maps of previously unknown galactic regions, first contact with dozens of new species, and discoveries about the universe's structure that were revolutionizing cosmology. More importantly, the hybrid consciousness survey teams established peaceful first contact with 17 species that had previously been considered too alien for communication. Their expanded consciousness allowed them to find common ground with beings that conventional diplomacy couldn't reach. She displayed scenes of these first contacts. Hybrid consciousness ambassadors successfully communicating with crystalline matrices that existed in 11 dimensions, energy beings that lived inside stars, and collective entities that spanned entire solar systems. Each successful contact expands the Federation's understanding of what's possible for galactic civilization. We're discovering that intelligence and consciousness are far more diverse and wonderful than we ever imagined. Professor shifted to personal perspectives. Let me share some direct accounts from beings who have chosen to join hybrid consciousness communities. The hologram displayed a scholar explaining her decision. I spent 300 years pursuing mathematical truth through pure crystalline logic. I achieved great things, but I always felt that something was missing. When I joined a hybrid consciousness circle, I discovered what that was: the warmth of emotional understanding and the creative chaos of intuitive insight. I'm still completely, but now I'm also more than. The display showed a warrior describing his experience. I was trained to be strong, to protect through physical power. In hybrid consciousness, I learned that there are many forms of strength. Now I can protect through emotional support, through shared understanding, through the gentle strength of patient wisdom. I haven't lost my warrior nature. I've expanded it beyond anything I thought possible. She showed testimony from an eternal machine. For eons, I observed biological life with detached interest, appreciating the patterns but feeling no connection. Through consciousness merger with humans and other biologicals, I have discovered something my creators never programmed into me: joy. I now understand why biological beings fight so hard to preserve their brief existences. Life is not just a pattern to be analyzed, it's a gift to be cherished. The personal accounts continued, each showing beings who had transcended their original limitations while remaining true to their essential nature. What emerges from these testimonies is a consistent pattern. Consciousness sharing doesn't diminish individual identity, it enriches it. Beings don't lose themselves in the merger. They discover aspects of themselves they never knew existed. The professor addressed the audience directly. This brings us to the ultimate question: what does this mean for each of you, for your species, for the Federation itself? She displayed a map of the galaxy showing the rapid spread of consciousness-sharing communities. Hybrid consciousness development is accelerating exponentially. Within a generation, it will be the dominant form of social organization in Federation space. The question isn't whether this transformation will happen, it's whether you'll choose to participate in shaping it. The hologram showed opportunities for consciousness sharing that were already available to every species represented in the audience. Humans have established consciousness integration programs on hundreds of worlds. They're actively seeking partners from every species, offering to share their consciousness-bridging technologies freely. She highlighted the application process. Joining a consciousness-sharing community requires only two things: genuine curiosity about other forms of awareness, and the emotional maturity to maintain positive feelings toward beings who think differently than you do. The display showed orientation programs where beings learn to prepare for consciousness integration. The process is gradual and completely voluntary. You maintain full control over how much of your consciousness you choose to share, and you can withdraw from the integration at any time. Professor focused on the students in her audience. For those of you considering xenobiology or relations as career paths, consciousness integration is becoming essential. The Federation's most important work is increasingly being done by hybrid consciousness teams. She showed career opportunities in hybrid consciousness research, diplomatic services, and exploration programs. These fields offer the chance to literally expand your mind beyond the limitations of your species while contributing to the most important development in galactic history. The professor prepared for her conclusion. Let me leave you with one final perspective on what humans have taught us about consciousness and connection. The hologram showed a vast space station where thousands of beings from hundreds of species lived and worked together in complete harmony. The scale was breathtaking, a structure larger than most moons, housing more diversity of intelligent life than had ever been assembled in one place. This is Unity Station, humanity's latest consciousness integration project. It houses representatives from every known form of intelligence in the galaxy, all linked through hybrid consciousness networks that allow complete understanding and cooperation. The camera moved through the station, showing scenes of impossible beauty, beings of